Jim Lucas, and we're here at Woodies on the Wharf today, June 23rd, 2018. On the top of the Woody, 51 Ford Woody wagon that Patty got me for my 40th birthday. And don't kill yourself there, Mike. Anyway, I've got Team Jacobs today. So we've got the Jacobs Lance Carson model. And then we've got the Jacobs 422, which was shaped by Dale Velsey. It's really super long concave, drawn-in hips, so it can maneuver as well as nose ride. It's a really cool board. So
if you look through here, they're predominantly Fords, and some people, if they own a different brand, say, hey, you know, how come you got so many Ford Woodies? But the reason is Henry Ford loved these cars. And these shoe boxes, like behind us, and some of them, all the wood on those things was milled in Iron Mountain, Michigan, and Henry Ford owned his own forest. So this was an act of love for him. And they made the wood, they put them on the cars, the whole thing, and they never really made much money on these things because they were totally impractical. It's like putting a piano and sending it out on the street. The wood would rot out. The reason they ended up surf cars is because the wood had rot and the engines were still good. It was before we had a lot of vans and stuff. So surfers would buy them for $200 like Howard's over there. And, you know, they didn't care if the wood was rotten. And we had no van, so they pulled the seats out, throw a mattress in the back, head to the beach, sleep in it, surf all day, and spend the weekend and come home. So, you know, that's why surfers ended up with them, but originally they were very high-end, very expensive cars, totally impractical, and that was it, you know. So that's what you see out here today. And all the other brands, Chevys, Buicks, they subcontracted the wood, so they'd send them out, and Cantrell was one of them. There was 2 or 3 groups that made the wooden bodies for the cars. So you'd go into a Buick dealership and you wanted a high-end fancy car for an estate or something. You'd buy the car, they'd ship it out, put the wood on it, send it back, and sell it to you. So car stores, and we're just talking about who can restore these things anymore, and it's becoming a real challenge if they have original flathead engines, because there's not very many people that work on them anymore, and the parts are outrageously expensive. So as a result, the cars are now expensive. You know, from a $150 car in 1960 for some high school kid to go surfing into cars that cost over $100,000 today. Same car, but restored. It's the genesis of where these cars came from. They're originally, you know, if you think of the covered wagons, the utilitarian use of a covered wagon on a farm or a ranch, you throw all your stuff in the back or people in the back. And then we had train stations, so they called them depot hacks. They'd go to the train station in the 20s, you know, in 1915 to 1930, and they'd pick people up at the train station, put their luggage, take them to a resort or something like that. So that's how they started as depot hacks, and then they switched the name to station wagons, and that's because of the train station. And from that, they just morphed, and people liked them, and that was just a style. And then after 1951, they quit doing wood because it was expensive, impractical. The whole concept was, especially with these shoe boxes, is that you could go to a Ford dealer and, you know, if your wood rotted out, they had it all in stock there. They just give you new wood, bolt it on, and now to do wood on maybe a shoe box, I don't know, probably hovering towards $20,000, and the ones that have the wooden roofs on them, maybe $35,000 to do it. So a little bit about the shoebox. Right behind me and down this row are they call them shoebox Fords. And the reason they're called shoeboxes is because starting in 1949 to 1951, they made these, and it was a modern car. What happened was the design of these things was before World War II. And the guy that designed the wood on these things is the same guy that designed Chris Craft boats. So that's why you see the dark wood with the maple trim dark wood in the middle. They look just like a Chris Craft. This was the first modern metal top car, and that's why they call them a shoebox, because when you look at them, they kind of look at that, versus the older ones that had stretched canvas on the roof, and from the cowl, which is the hood, and the window from that back was all wood. These guys are metal top cars starting in 1949. It was the beginning of modern cars. And then after 51, the wood was gone, they did faux wood, phony wood made out of metal, and they did that for years later. So most of the cars here, you're not going to find cars that are past 51 or 52, something like that. But that's the history of the shoebox Fords. Safety feature. Before the shoebox, there were four-door Woodies. They were more wagony, they were higher, and the problem is with little kids, kind of like our age, bratty little kids, they'd open the door and they'd fall out. So in 1949, Fords came up with this and advertised it as a family car. It holds 8, and the safety feature was that there's no back door. They made a bigger front door so that the little kids in the back couldn't get out without mom or dad opening the front door. So that was a safety feature. They went from 4-door to 2-door with a big wide door. And then all the little kids in the back there, if you're my age, you remember your mom or dad on those summer trips where they'd say, if you don't cut that out, I'm going to pull over and smack you one. But the good part is if you're a little kid, like my dad had one of these, I'd sit in the way back and you could raise hell and terrorize your sister. And you knew he couldn't pull over and get you back there. So that's kind of how it worked. But they were really geared for families and family cars before they became surf vehicles, So.
I'm Steve Pereira, the beach guy here in Santa Cruz. And this 51 Ford Woody I picked up in about 2005 from a guy who got it from his sister. And the story is that sister bought it for her husband for a 50th birthday. And about 2 years later, she was a high-powered attorney, and she flew off to New York on a business trip, and when she got there, the meeting had been canceled, so she flew back that same night. Came in, found her husband with the secretary, and called her brother the next morning and said, take a cab over here, I've got something for you. And he said, take a cab? I don't get it. He just come over. So the husband was out with the U-Haul out front, moving his boxes, and up drives the brother, and it was like cats and dogs between the two. And the wife comes out and hands the brothers the key to the car, says it's all yours. The husband had forgotten that she bought it, and pink slip was in her name. And so I ended up with the car. He lived in Auburn on top of a mountain and couldn't drive it. So anyway, that's how I got it.
I was getting ready to move to Australia, and Larry and Mike were kind of doing a transition thing, so they did different stuff. So it's either the end of 64 or very early 65.
Nice. So I can start by saying that the board was found in PB in San Diego by my brother Mike, probably 35 years ago, 40 years ago, and he's had this in his garage, and for my 60th birthday, he gave this to me for my birthday. So Floyd Smith and Larry Gorden made this surfboard in 1964. Okay. So go ahead and tell them about the board.
Okay. Basically, Larry Gorden was teaming up with Mike Henson, and they were wanting to make a model. And the only other model at that time was the Phil Edwards model by Hobie. So they didn't want to copy it, but then they liked that idea. So this was a stringer arrangement, and this has everything on a Henson model, but the actual sticker that says it's a Henson model. And probably was the last board made that didn't have the Henson model. And Larry and Mike Henson went on, and they had the most popular surfboard model ever in surfing. It was called the Mike Henson, which was kind of a hard problem because Mike spelled his last name Hynson, and people didn't know how to pronounce it. But finally, he went on that surf trip around the world with the Endless Summer. And 2 weeks before he left, he switched from Gorden and Smith to Hobie, and that didn't endear me very much at the time. But
I remember that.
That's part of business.
So what makes this board rare is that this is a red fin, 3-stringer Gorden Smith, just a few months before the Mike Henson model ever came out. That's what makes this board basically a prototype. And this has been confirmed by Floyd, and that's why he signed it, which makes the board very rare.
Oh, it is, and this is the best condition Henson model that I've ever seen. It's just gorgeous. It's just